Good morning. I welcome the opportunity to speak at this conference, and I'm really sorry that I can't be there in person because microfinance is a subject of interest to me and to the new Australian government. Microfinance interests us because of the opportunities it presents to pull people out of desperate circumstances and extreme poverty. We all know that being born into poverty or living in extreme poverty is hard enough. But not having access to money to escape that poverty is a double blow. And that's where microfinance comes in. The beauty of microfinance is that it can give people opportunities that they're otherwise denied. So today I want to give you a brief update on where microfinance sits within the Australian Government's broader aid program and where we want to go with it in the future. Broadly, we support microfinance. We know it's not a magic bullet. It won't solve the challenge of poverty in our region by itself, but in the right settings it can be a great help to some of the most disadvantaged and some of the marginalised people in our communities. I've had the opportunity to see at first hand the way microfinance can give women and people with disability the start they need to invest in business activities and build up assets. And I like the way it can help families make the transition from a day-to-day existence to planning for the longer term, to taking more control of their lives. We know microfinance won't work everywhere and for everybody, and we've had our successes and failures like everyone else. For the most part, up until now, we've concentrated on building the capacity of institutions that have the potential to become long-term providers of microfinance for the poor. But we want to scale up our involvement. Over the next few years, we'll extend the type of support we fund, and we'll at least double our microfinance budget. We'll be doing more, not just here in the Pacific and in PNG, but more broadly around the world. We'd also like to see where innovative technology can be integrated into microfinance service delivery and see how we can support the expansion, for example, of the use of mobile telephones and information technology, because these technologies can break through many of the barriers. There's a whole range of new technologies that people have been piloting in several countries, including here in the Pacific. And we want to see how we can help integrate that into microfinance service delivery. On a closely related issue, we're also looking to explore new ways to support female entrepreneurship in the Pacific through our Development Research Awards. We want to look at things like what role can microfinance play in the economic empowerment of women? What products and services do women in the Pacific region want and need to get ahead? We also want to help on the question of financial literacy. This is a very important part of people taking control of their lives and their finances, particularly as it relates to remittances, which is such an important issue in the Pacific and where so many countries in this region receive a lot of money in remittances, even though we all know the global recession is slowing down the flow for the moment. It's important people know how to transfer their money in the most cost-effective way, and it's important that they understand their rights. The UNDP is doing some really good work in this area through the Pacific Financial Inclusion Program, and we're working with New Zealand to develop a new website for Pacific Islanders to determine the lowest cost transfer method for their remittances. We think this will be particularly useful to Pacific Islanders working in Australia and New Zealand under seasonal workers schemes. These workers will also be offered financial literacy training, and I particularly want to refer to the enterprise development training we hope to give them in case they want to use their earnings from Australia to set up or invest in small businesses when they return home. You can see how all these ideas work together. Microfinance, financial literacy, enterprise development training. And to ensure best practice in the delivery of this assistance, we'll continue our involvement with organisations such as the Consultative Group to Assist the Poor. The Australian Government understands the challenges the countries in the Pacific face with microfinance. They're very real, but they're not insurmountable. If we want economies to grow and poverty to be reduced, people have to be given access to finance. There's a very good example in PNG of how this can happen. For the past 6 years, the Australian Government and the Asian Development Bank have been working with the Bank of Papua New Guinea to develop the institutional and the human capacity of microfinance service providers, and it seems to be working. The total number of depositors and borrowers in regulated institutions was 65,000 in 2002, and it's grown to nearly 500,000. That's an 8-fold improvement in 6 years. People are also choosing to use other unregulated, semi-formal and informal microfinance services provided by NGOs and community organisations. I said at the outset of this talk that microfinance can also help give people with disability an entry into the formal economy, and I understand there's a good example of this in Fiji. Last year, Australia sponsored a workshop for people with disability to look at ways they might be able to enter the workforce and contribute to the economy in the same way as everyone else. Several people came up with viable ideas, and they are now receiving microfinance loans and training in financial literacy to get their small businesses up and running. This is very encouraging, and we'll be interested to follow the progress of these businesses. We all now need to recognise that microfinance can play an important role in poverty reduction. There is a determination within the Australian Government, from the Prime Minister down, that we can and will do more in this area over the next few years. So I wish you well with this conference. I hope it leads to some positive steps forward, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.